Bruce Whitfield in my studio in Johannesburg.
Stef du Plessis, I'm in your studio in Johannesburg. Isn't that lekker?
Bruce, so you're here from London. I heard you speak at a conference here in Joburg not so long ago. You did The Power of And. I told you at the end of it, it blew my mind. It really did. It got me to make decisions. Oh my word. I sit back of room often when I am on the program myself, and I wasn't on the program where you were. But I often am sitting in the back of the room when I am on the program myself and get to hear the other speakers and have heard enough speakers to last me a lifetime. And from the moment you said your third word, you had me paying attention, and you had me in the conversation. And in that talk, The Power of And, you got me to change my mind on something. I told you that at the end. And
I didn't know if you were joking or not, because we don't know each other. I know of you and you know of me. We'd never met in person before. And I turned to Graham Codrington, who you've done lots of work with and I know, and I said, is he taking the mickey? And I used a different word. And he said, no.
Did you ask him?
Yes, because I was looking for a point of reference, because I trust Graham, and I didn't know you well enough to trust you. And he said, no, he's being serious. And I went, okay, are you both taking the mickey now? Because and it was a wonderful affirmation of a talk which I had in me but had never done before, because previously I'd done talks on current affairs.
Yeah, you had only started doing that talk.
That was the first day I'd done it.
Okay.
I'd written it on a business class flight because, in seat 1A to Southeast Asia on a different project. And it suddenly came to me.
2C is my seat.
Is it? Yeah. Mine's usually 44B or something, but anyway. And I suddenly had this bee in my bonnet, and I went, this is what it's going to look like. And in the 6 hours between London and Qatar, I wrote a 45-minute keynote, and then I whittled it down to a 5-minute version. And it is drawn from decades of frustration at negativity, political negativity, economic negativity, people taking a binary view of very complex problems, and it's either black or it's white. There's no middle ground, there's no granularity, there's no subtlety to people's views. Social media has made that worse. And it first really struck me when I read Hans Rosling's book, Factfulness, in about 2015. And I just read this book where he used... 2015,
2025, it's been a long time in the making.
Well, exactly, but I mean, lots has happened in between. But yeah, 2015, Hans Rosling's book, he died before I got hold of the book, and he used data and popular myths and dispelled popular myths, popular beliefs, things that we take as fact, which are not fact, and he disproved them, and he stood on stages around the world, blew the world away, and unfortunately didn't live to fulfill a much bigger destiny. But I saw this and I went, this has to be South Africanized. And I wrote a book then called The Upside of Down in 2019. And I said, South Africa, lots of problems, but this is what's going right. And it launched in the week we went into COVID. And I was waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning with dreams of big trucks moving into all of the bookstores and taking only my book off the shelves, of course, and taking it off to be pulped because there was no upside left. And I went, hold on a second, that's not true.
There is an upside.
Of course. And there was huge upside to be had in terms of a recalibration of a society, the way we saw things, the fact that...
The way we do things.
Yeah. The way vaccines happened so quickly, all of these things
when we
were
walked
wonders.
in here, the garage of my home, when we walked in here, you asked me, had this happened before COVID? And I briefly told you the story of how it happened as a consequence of COVID. And there's like a whole new beginning. But wait. In my pocket here, which I haven't shown you this evening, I actually have the item that sat at the core of the thing in my head that I changed, and I'll show it to you later. So then we spoke again after, and we chatted, and I convinced you that I was dead serious about what The Power of And had done for me, and now you believe it. And for anyone out there watching, I want you to give them a highlight of The Power of And. Tell me about the power of and.
So the power of and is about additive thinking. The power of and is, if you incorporate and into your language, you can't have a binary thought on anything. So often when either we wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, we have a brilliant idea and we write it down on a piece of paper we've been told to keep next to our beds. We wake up in the morning and we look at it, we go, oh, that's brilliant. But, I'm busy today, I'll do it tomorrow. But, that's going to take a bit of money. But I'm busy, I haven't got time. But it's complicated, but I'm going to need collaborators. And it never gets done. And it was suddenly this idea, what happens if you swap one conjunction for another? And it emerged while I was doing an MBA last year from a wonderful professor at Henley Business School, and he was doing personal development stuff, and he said, every time you're working on your MBA and you hit the wall and you go, but, swap it with and.
Yeah, but wait. It went back way before that professor, something with your father.
No, but that, and I'm really, as a speaker, not expressing myself very well. But that was the catalyst, was this and I got my head around that. And then I thought to myself, what is it about and that is so fundamentally different from but? And opens up a conversation. The moment you come to me and say, I've got this great idea, and I go, that's really interesting. Thank you, Stef. But. And then I go back to my lived experience. And all I can rely on is what I've got in my arsenal. And I've got my scars and my hardships and my excitement and my biases and beliefs. And I can tell you 1,000 good reasons why that wouldn't work. And for 20 years on the radio, and I did a radio show between 6 and 8 in the evening, and it was a business radio show. I was ill-equipped to do it. I had highfalutin CEOs, and I had to second-guess them. I had to seem confrontational, so I went, but. It would have been so much more productive had I woken up to this idea of and before, because and is so much more challenging than but. But shuts down conversations. But is the thing that goes, it's a roadblock.
Give us an example.
So you come up and you say, I've got this great idea, we should collaborate. And I go, yeah, but we're not in the country at the same time. Yes, but I'm really busy. Yes, but I'm working on something else. Instead of doing that, I say, yeah, and it's quite complicated. How do we work around it? And how can we make it work? Can you use your studio? I can set up a studio. What are the prospective revenues? We start a conversation that is more collaborative, more expansive than my immediate going, but it won't work.
For me, at a personal level, I was quite married to a view on
a geographic part of the world. Yes.
And I'd known all along that there was an and, not a but. But when you did, I just say but?
You just did, but I didn't call you out. I didn't call you out.
You didn't call me out.
And I didn't.
When you framed it for me the way you did, and an anecdote of your father,
so
it got me that I can really expand.
So there's a great quote, and it says that the reasonable man, and this is an old quote, the reasonable man molds himself to the world. The unreasonable man molds the world to himself. Therefore,
that was the thing.
All progress depends on the
an unreasonable man.
Yes, absolutely.
And your father was an unreasonable man.
And it's a wonderful thing to do because so many people in the speaking profession love to tell sob stories because it's heart-wrenching. And some people have genuine hardship and their stories of recovery are amazing, and those are really good. I am a deeply privileged and fortunate individual who had a father until the age of 90. He was 92 3/4. I was over 50 when he died. We played golf together. We had a lovely whiskey habit. It was an awesome relationship. But when you stand up on the stage and you say, my father was an unreasonable man, and you pause, you can see people sinking into their seats because they fear what is coming next, because usually what follows that was, he beat me, he was unkind to me,
sad
locked
story
me in the
around
cellar.
it. And it was at that point that you had me. That's where you got me, and I want you to know that it stuck with me, and it has been with me since.
Can we please tell everybody why my father was unreasonable? Because I'm really doing him brand damage here.
Please do.
My dad farmed for 60 years.
Yes.
He worked for his father when he left school and did a deal with his father for 20% of his crop every year. He had to give over the first 20% to his father over 5 years. No matter whether it was a boom or a bust year, his father wanted him to know the value of money and how hard it was to own land and how hard it was to farm land. And they did this deal. And so he got his first farm that way, and over time built up his farming business until the age of 82, when he finally sold everything and retired. And his unreasonableness was this unfailing belief in cycles. Some years are going to be good, some years are going to be bad. If you're not in it, you never will have a chance to progress. You have to plant no matter what happens. And so every year, in planting season, he would pour he would hope for a shower of rain at least, so that the ground was moist, so that the seed could germinate. You can't plant in dry ground. And there's always going to be a shower, and then you've got to judge whether or not it's going to be enough. And he would plant all of last year's profits into the ground, if there were profits. If there were no profits, he'd borrow money from a bank, especially set up to help farmers in difficult times. And there were a couple of years where he had to do that. He still went ahead and did it. And he planted all of this into furrows in the ground, in the belief that the crops would grow, in the belief that when harvest time came, the price would be sufficient to reward him for the risk he'd taken, to ensure that he had some to distribute, some to spend, and some to put into the ground again next year. And he did this year after year after year. And there were 3 or 4 years, had he been less prepared and less ready for the potential downside, where things would have gone badly awry for him. And there was one time when my much older brothers were at school where there was a terrible drought and there was a serious consideration on their schooling. There was a time during my schooling where there was an even worse drought, and my father made a decision to keep me in school and sacrifice development on the farm.
Unreasonable man that he was.
Absolutely, a deeply unreasonable thing to do, because this is your livelihood, but you're sacrificing development of your livelihood, your family's livelihood, for the education of this pipsqueak who may or may not amount to anything. It's quite a big risk. And I'm very grateful that he did. But it was that unreasonableness, and the unreasonableness of Steve Jobs, these devices today would not exist had it not been for the unreasonableness of Steve Jobs. An absolute nightmare to work for, an absolute harridan and really demanding individual. But without his demanding nature, it would never have been released in the form that it was released in, and wouldn't have changed the world in the way that it has. In the same way as every industry in the world has had its mavericks and its visionaries who have changed the world for good. And that is the unreasonableness that I focus on. And part of that unreasonableness, and then it's also struck me that in the podcast series, I've got a podcast. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called The Art of Deciding. Because when I stepped back from the radio career, I went, what has been the favorite thing that I've done over 20 years? I really love positive, inspiring people who create value out of nothing.
And that's the podcast.
And the podcast is decision-making under pressure, decision-making, how do you do it? So Lee Child, who wrote the Jack Reacher books, was my first guest. And he...
Okay, so I didn't know that.
You know,
so,
thanks for listening.
So I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Because Lee Child and his man, Jack Reacher, are important cornerstones of my life.
How?
I'm a Jack Reacher fan, so I've read all the books, and I didn't know that Lee Child was. Or did I know that? I did not know that Lee Child. Okay, so immediately after, you are going to point me to that first episode,
so Lee Child,
so that I can hear. And Lee Child has an amazing story.
Here's an own story. So he's in television. He's in television production. He's at the top of his game. He works for something called Granada Television. The accountants come in. They go cut, 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 cut. And Lee Child and a bunch of his management mates are kicked out. And he's got 7 months worth of money.
And he's an unreasonable man.
He can either do the reasonable thing, which is go and look for another job like all of his mates do, or he can write a bestseller. Now, he's in the storytelling business because Granada Television did some really iconic British TV. And he says, I'm going to write a bestseller. And if that doesn't work, I can go and find a job. Within 6 months, he sold the first Jack Reacher book. And the rest is history. He sold $1.5 billion worth of books, got the really odd show on Amazon. He doesn't care because he is so disconnected from all of this stuff.
So I want to know more about Lee Child, but we're not going to do it here and now in this video because we're going to run out of time.
Listen to the podcast.
I want to take it to a separate conversation, but I'm going to listen to the podcast, as should everyone else there watching this video. Now, then the next thing...
So to the point, the podcast was all about actually very unreasonable people who are very resilient and who've made big decisions in their lives that have affected not only them, but those around them, have created movements, have created Lord Carambola Moria, Cobra Beer, Sir Brad Freed from Cape Town, who becomes the chairman of the Bank of England.
These stories I remember.
Liv Bourrie, a world champion poker player, and her story about being on a reality TV show and crumbling under pressure and the decision to continue. And just fabulous stories of, and I went, hold on a second, so I've got and, but, unreasonable, the unknown, I didn't realize at the time, but actually all of the guests on the podcast are and thinkers. And I went, let's connect these dots. And out of that came a talk called The Power of And.
And remarkable talk. Anyone, seriously, one last time, of the, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of keynotes that I've heard, this one sticks with me with the top few that I have ever heard and honestly has impacted on me permanently. Moving on, tell us in summary version. Tell us in summary version before I go to the next conversation point. Tell us in summary, like cluster it for us. Unreasonableness, the power of and. Give us one outcome here that the person out there not familiar with the whole concept can go away and do or practice or try to emulate,
so this is
to elevate themselves.
This is a brand new talk, right? And the challenge, the one thing that is in it that is a challenge, it says simply stop using the word but. Ban it from your vocabulary.
As simple as that.
Ban it from your vocabulary. Use and, because and turns you into that unreasonable person and forces a conversation and forces the exchange of ideas. It's not the blockage, it's not the roadblock. And what I've been told from it is brand new, I've delivered it a handful of times, is that the thing that happens to people immediately...
Being modest, because I happen to know that you've delivered it a handful of times at pretty prestigious events, but yes, a handful of times.
Once in Malaysia, once in London, once and people immediately go into the lunch break and immediately start catching themselves using the word but. They start playing the game. They start testing it on each other.
So make it a habit.
Yes.
Earlier on one of my bookshelves here, you saw the atomic habits.
So atomic habits, tiny habits, they're all there.
So make it a habit.
Yes.
Cool. And then another thing happened. Yesterday, 2 days ago, I get an email from a client of mine that I'm running a long-term culture transformation intervention for, and we're doing their monthly check-in tomorrow. And Thursday we're doing their monthly check-in, and he tells me that he's done this thing with his team and asks me, can I incorporate it into the evolution of our journey? Can we make it a part of their culture? Can we incorporate this into their leader behaviors? Can we link it to their values? I say, what are you on about? He says, he says he asked his senior team each to come up with the one thing that they would change if they were CEO for 30 minutes. I said, show me more, tell me more. And so he sent me the email that he sent out to his senior team, in which he references you, where he's telling his senior team, I've just read this book, Bruce Whitfield, and it talks about the one thing. If you were the president of your country for 30 minutes, what would you change? So he asked his senior team that, and they each submitted what they would change if they were CEO for 30 minutes. And the outputs of what they put forward to him are remarkable. And I've now worked at it a little bit, and we're incorporating it into his strategy and linking it to his values.
Brilliant.
Tell us about the one thing.
So the one thing, again, emanates from that frustration of people whinging and whining about what's wrong. Any idiot can tell you what's wrong. It really, you don't need a special set of skills.
These two things are linked. These two conversations are linked.
You don't need a special set of skills to tell you what's wrong in the country, what's wrong in the world, what's wrong in your company, what's wrong with your family. Any fool can do that. It takes a very special kind of fool to dare to think, how do we do it differently? And so I finished on the radio show after 21 years at the end of June 2024. And
it's just the other day.
It is just very, very recent. And I looked at my calendar, and I had an empty month of July with some speaking appointments in it, but largely empty. And I thought, if I don't fill the month of July, my wife is going to fill it with jobs for me, like unpacking boxes that haven't been unpacked for years and doing admin and things. And we can't have that. And we were going on a big family holiday in the August, and so I went, I need to write a book. And Dr. Michael Maudsley, very famous in the UK, had just died. He went on a walk on a Greek island and was overcome by the heat and unfortunately died on the island. He'd hit on this thing of the one thing you should do from a health perspective.
Okay.
And I went, I can actually use that and in a different way. And so by giving credit to him for it, I went, the one thing. And I sent a WhatsApp to 120 leaders in business and civil society. And I said to them, if you were president for half an hour and you could do just one thing that was implementable, is that a word? You could implement first thing tomorrow, very small thing that could have a compounding effect over time. What is that one small thing you would do?
An action, something visible, something you could do.
Absolutely, and be seen to do it. And then allow it to get momentum and to carry itself and to grow and create a movement. Butterfly effect, flywheel effect, call it what you like. And I got more than 100 responses back. People really latched onto this idea.
And that was the foundation of the book.
And within 2 weeks, I had all of the responses back. I put them into a book. My publishers couldn't believe when it arrived 3 or 4 days ahead of deadline. And I went off on my holiday. We published it on the 1st of October. And I love the fact that it is being appropriated in the way that it is.
But it properly is.
And because that's the purpose of it. It is, how do you change mindsets? Hans Rosling wrote his book, Factfulness, had absolutely no idea what impact it would have. It's changed the way people think about the future. Because once you start interrogating facts, and you start finding solutions to real-world problems, you start fixing real-world problems. You're not responding to the news flow, you're not responding to emotion and feelings, you're responding to real issues. And Lesotho Kganyago, in the Reserve Bank governor, in a speech in 2021, one line leapt out at me and said, everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. That was embedded in my brain. And I was actually, what's left of my hair was being cut in a barbershop in Cape Town, and this young man was cutting my hair, and then he said, stop! He said, what? I said, if you were president for half an hour and you could do one thing, what would it be? And he went, crime. I said, well, you would do crime? No, I'd stop crime. Okay, how would you do that? And then the conversation died because he comes from the Cape Flats, he runs a gauntlet every day. He didn't have the solutions.
That sparked the conversation.
And I went, this is a good thing.
I get it.
Lesotho Kganyago, this idea, that idea, input from high-level people, let's get things moving.
Now, encapsulate that for business leaders. The one thing.
So
tell us what a business leader can do to use the concept.
What is so powerful is what your friend has done. Either you just steal it and you do what your friend has done, or you do what the CEO of a large company did and invited, it took the book cover and put it into his entire conference was the One Thing conference, and he had 300 staff in the room. And I spoke about the One Thing principle.
And
the
you
concept,
facilitated this.
and then facilitated with him, drawing from his team, and this is the power of this thing, because you ask the team, what is one thing you would do? They then give me the information written on bits of paper, so it's nice
Each
and short.
individual
Yes.
writes a note.
And I get a bucket full of these things, and I randomly choose them after getting a commitment
Like
from the
literally
CEO.
randomly then and there.
Yeah. CEO hasn't seen the question, and I operate on the basis, and it goes back 15 years, where the CEO of a company in trouble contacted me and said, I need you to be absolutely mean to me in front of 1,000 of my most brilliant staff, and please come and we'll talk about it. And he gave me a file this thick and he said, this is all the stuff that's in the public domain that you know about because you've interviewed me about the stuff. That's it. Here's more stuff you don't know about, and I need you to put this to me on the stage as well. Will you do it? And when you think you're getting a bit tough for me, get tougher, because I have to convince my team that I am in control. And we did this, and I was absolutely ruthless and relentless. To a point where I was feeling bad, where he was actually coming under extreme pressure. And I bumped into somebody the other day who said, I saw you at that event, at this particular venue. And it was brilliant, because the mood of the company turned off the back of a leader.
People can tell honesty when they see it.
Absolutely.
People can tell authenticity when they see it.
And CEOs know their businesses. And if there's anything in that bucket that surprises them, they should be blooming grateful that they've learned something
100%.
new. There's not likely to be anything in there that is brand new. Another team, for example, I said...
And if there is, they should be grateful for the opportunity to address it.
And say, I don't know. That's a really serious thing. If you're comfortable, come and see me about this and tell me so that we can fix it.
I'll do something about it.
And I will.
Did you see what I did there?
You were so good at that. And that's how it works. And people are appropriating in different ways. And I did an event the other day for a company in Malaysia. Chinese imports are threatening their livelihoods. and the sales team is deeply despondent. And so they got unreasonable, they got power of and, they got the and thinking treatment, and wedged into that, you bring in the power of the one thing, and you say to them, okay, we know what your issues are that you face. We all know that. Okay, so nothing new there. What is one thing you would do to change it?
So now, let's wrap this with you giving me the nutshell of how power of and the one thing go together as a philosophy, as a strategy, as a mechanism for individuals and organizations.
So, and this can work in families. What's not working in our family? Let's talk about it. I mean, it's quite a gutsy thing to do if you've got teenagers. What's the one thing that's not working in my church? What's the one thing that is not working in the company? And you're inviting a conversation. And the suggestion box is...
But then be courageous enough to have the conversation.
Completely. And you've got to be a gutsy leader to do this.
And be unreasonable in your solutions.
And one thing is you're being unreasonable in that you're willing to do it. Because a reasonable person would go, I know what the issues are, I can fix them, I'm in charge.
But hang on, in execution of the outcomes, be unreasonable.
Absolutely.
Go and,
completely.
Not but.
Yes, correct. So Shiro Honda, the founder of the Honda Motor Corporation, was a big proponent of and. And his mechanism for delivering and was why. So the car's not starting. Why? Well, the battery's flat. Why? Well, the alternator belt is worn out. Why? It wasn't replaced at the last service. Why? Well, the service book wasn't there and the guy who was doing it was in a hurry. Why? Well, he was overworked.
And you actually get to the core of the problem. Root cause.
Absolutely.
And you fix that.
Because the moment you start doing just, the battery's flat, well, replace the alternator belt. You don't... Next 10 cars are going to have flat batteries because you didn't solve the core of the problem. And so it invites a conversation between teams and teams share information differently in that sort of environment. With one restaurant franchise group, I said, what's one thing you do in your franchise that others could learn from? And people wrote them down. They reasoned things down. One of the answers, I thought this is bleeding obvious, but let me read it out anyway. I greet my staff by name every morning and
which
ask
one would think is obvious.
A personal question. And I suddenly saw all heads going down, people writing it down. I went, hold on a second. You operate a very high-end restaurant franchise.
And now you know it's not so obvious because people are paying attention.
You want your staff to treat your customers like gold. I've seen most of you operate, and you all go and schmooze your customers. Some of you have got better staff than others. But you expect them to be more like you, yet you don't treat them like the way you treat your customers.
But the key to this is having the conversation.
Completely. And suddenly people are going, we must do that.
I see this coming together. It's having the being courageous enough to have the conversation, getting people to be brave enough to voice their one thing.
And it's anonymous, so you can say anything. And occasionally you'll get somebody who's obviously not into it. And that's fine.
Yeah, but you're looking for the real, you're looking for the
nuggets.
Meat. But then,
if you only get one thing out of it that improves 100%. The future of your business, that's one thing you didn't have before.
In execution, you want to be unreasonable, and you want to go and until you get to the real core.
Get to the real cause, and then find the solutions, and bring the right people within your organization. Quick story before I let you go. Robbie Brosen, the best story about why you should always listen to the little people in your company. Robbie Brosen is building Nando's with Fernando Duarte. There are 3 stores. They've run out of money. They've got this big burning ambition. They want to take this chicken to the world.
Give us a point in time.
This is probably 1989, 1990. They've got 3 restaurants in South Africa, one in Rosettenville, one in Germiston Lakes, and one in Berea, just off Louis Botha Avenue. And guy sees Robbie Brosen in the meat packing plant, a guy called Bruce McElroy, and says to Robbie Brosen, I heard you talking the other day about wanting to take this chicken to the UK. My parents have got friends in England. They seem to be quite rich. They're in insurance or something. Do you want to meet them? Apparently they're like South Africa businesses. And he said, I'd love to do that. And so Bruce McElroy organizes an interview with Dick Enthoven of the massive Hollard insurance franchise, big business in the UK, all over the place. And I've got this most wonderful clip of audio on a previous podcast series that I was allowed to use of Dick Enthoven, who was very media shy, very under the radar, saying it was the best chicken I'd ever tasted. I just knew I had to have some of this. And they had Robbie Brozin not bothered to engage Bruce McEnroy, that meeting at
100%.
the Savoy, so Savoy and Nando's would never have happened. Nando's may have become a nice little local franchise. It would never have
But
got
it wouldn't have become what it became.
And now there are 500 stores in the UK. It is the most popular place for people to go lunch. The queues are out the doors for hours. And it is a global phenomenon with 1,500 stores. And that emanates from a CEO with enough EQ willing to listen to the little guy. You've got to listen to the little guy. It can be painful. It can be agonizing because a lot of what you get is annoying.
Listen to the little guy and then
there may be
take it on. And
take it
go
seriously.
and.
Yeah. And
Okay.
butt out of butt.
So butt out of butt. We could do this forever, but we can't. So thanks for chatting. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for doing this in my studio. So I suppose that what remains is to say, from my studio in Johannesburg, my guest, Bruce Whitfield, we wish you goodbye.
No. Why goodbye? Well, wish them goodbye, not us.
We wish them goodbye.
Okay, so,
And we want them to do two or three things. Take but out of your reference.
Yes.
Go and if you're a leader, listen, get input from your people, take it seriously, and then
act on
go
it.
And
change. Because the moment you have a useful nugget of information and you've crowdsourced it in that way and you've gone public with it and you don't act on it, you better have a blooming good reason why not. So it puts pressure on the leadership team to truly galvanize and solve problems deep in
I
their
would
business.
so want to punt my client and the amazing company that he runs, but I don't have his permission, so I won't do that. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for chatting. From my studio in Johannesburg.
From his studio in Johannesburg.
Okay, bye.